In the end, community leaders were like actors, we're like performers. We just need the love of the crowd. We just need you guys to look at us. We have so much to say. We need the stage. But don't worry. Hey, Aviva, welcome. So yeah, all you guys, if you have great questions, just ask them. Hey, Carol, how are you doing? And just, put them in the Q&A and people will upvote your questions during the session. And then we'll bring to stage whoever has the most upvotes in our questions. And just all you need to do is raise your hand. You have the icon of raise your hand underneath, and we'll put you on stage and it will be really, really cool. Okay, starting to have growth with the people. So without any further ado, 3 p.m. sharp, at least here, it's 1 p.m. in the UK, right, Vince?
Yeah, 1 o'clock.
We had the confusion with the GMT plus.
Yeah.
it's plus for us, but you're backwards. You're -2 to get through your time. So anyway, yeah, we have Merav, great. So I'll do a short introduction of Vince, but Vince will do a better introduction on himself, and also he'll tell a bit about his experience as a community leader for large organizations, for social ventures and different ideas and things he did. Everything is a bit social when you do communities, but it's all about different stories and different things he's doing. And also he's working on something that I'm super excited about, Giant Technologies, the company he founded and is leading right now. And maybe we'll touch a bit about that later on. So Vince, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thank you very much for having me.
So just if you can just in a very 30,000 feet, tell the people, because I think, most of the people that had so much experience are very modest and try to drop things out, but just in bullet points during your career, are you going to talk about it in the story or maybe we should?
Yeah, no, this basically, the session is going to be very much just me telling you stories of experiences that I've had while building communities for very large corporates, as well as cool new startups. So it will be very much stories from the trenches and some observations from me around what I can see happening on the internet now, and hopefully some ideas that will help people build their own communities. And so basically, yeah, some of the things that have helped me along the way that I've noticed, that's what I'm going to be sharing today.
So great. So I like to call them more than stories. They're case studies. They're really things that you can really analyze and get from it. And Vince and I have been talking about this talk, I think about 3-4 months, that how much I want him online giving this talk. So I'll hide myself and let Vince lead. If there's anything you need, I'll be backstage just in hide and facilitating the talk. Remember, guys, raise your hand if you have a question, put it in the Q&A, and we'll upvote it and put it in the end. So Vince, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Vincent Boon. I've been an online community strategist, architect, and manager for at least 20 years or something like that now, for a variety of businesses and organizations. I'm now involved in a new startup, which, surprise, surprise, is building community software. But don't worry, I won't be, talking about that. It's not a sales pitch. It's really around kind of like my pioneering days of, working in online communities. And hopefully I'll tell you some things that are, I don't think very widely understood. So please get comfortable, as it's really going to be about stories from my life, real life examples, so not claims, real things that have happened. And anything that I've done, you can really adapt to your own organization, right? So feel free to, just chill out and listen to this. And like all good stories, mine starts with a poker game. Here you can see some of the brands that I've worked with over the years, and I will, go into, little, examples of some of the cool things that have happened there while building these communities. The story, is going to really take you from 4 people playing poker in a pub in London to eventually 200,000 people playing poker. It's going to be around successful brand-owned communities, and some of the stuff that I've done is still the model for what a community can do for a business today. My experience really runs from the very early stage startups like giffgaff or Pure Planet to very large incumbent enterprise companies such as Movistar or Sony. So wherever you are in your journey, I really hope that you will learn something today that can apply to your specific business. So initially, I got involved in building communities in the late 90s, early 2000s, right? Mostly for hobby communities around games that I played, or organizing other groups online. Sometimes to old platform called IRC or initial message boards. And I will be talking about this stuff, as you can see some of these results here, they're really, came out through building community, right? This is not marketing stuff. And so one of the early kind of like successes around community was around, people playing poker in a pub, like I said, and it was really, in early 2000s, people are kind of like scared of poker, right? What the game was and meeting new people around it, because it was like, around gambling, and we've seen the movies like Rounders and, all kinds of Russian mobsters playing poker. So it was really about looking for people sort of say like, all right, cool. You guys want to learn the game. Obviously, can't be, about like lots of money, because otherwise it's not fun anymore. And, we started off just taking over a couple of tables in a pub, teaching people how to actually play the game. And that we organized online as well. And that eventually grew to 200,000 people all over London, organizing games, in a nice kind of like social environment. We eventually started taking over complete pubs rather than just a couple of tables. Got the landlords quite, scared, certainly around legislation, because it was, like a thing here in England around whether poker was a game of skill or whether it was a game of chance. If it's a game of chance, you had to have a license for it. If it was a game of skill, it was allowed. So, that's quite a, kind of like a fun kind of like initial community that I started building. And as I was doing that, I was working for a company called Eidos. And, I just sort of like looked at the initial kind of like philosophy and some of the principles I'd done by building these sort of like hobby communities in the poker community. And I wanted to apply that to, where I was working. And I was working for a computer games developer called Eidos. The guys who make Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, Hitman, Commandos, a range of games like that. You might have heard of some of them, as they've been made into movies. And I was working for them, and I was working on a computer game which was all around managing, football teams, called Championship Manager. I was working in a quality assurance department, and there were about 60 of us all testing a game, which is obviously an enormous amount of money that is being spent on testing a piece of software. And I was building communities, and then sometimes the people that were playing this game, right, massive fans, would stand outside the door and of the office and sometimes berate us testers because there were like bugs in the game that they didn't like. And so I thought, well, if people are like that enthusiastic, right, that are happy to stand outside of our office to tell us how shit we are at our jobs, they must be interested in actually, possibly helping us out with this, right? So I worked with the marketing department, and we sort of looked at all of these people, basically email addresses, and started sending out a few emails asking people if they would be interested in helping me test this game. And the response was really positive, and I got about 2,000 people starting to test this game. And it was all set up really simply. I literally had a little website with drop-down menus, exactly as my bug database was, and they would submit something and a bug would drop into my database. I would divide that amongst the testers, and we would retest that to see if the bugs were actually there. Now that became so much bigger. Eventually we had 20,000 people testing the game, and they started creating leagues and letters and newspapers and all kinds of content for the game. So, the game became much richer as an experience. And then when the game launched, it immediately had its initial community already. So it was very successful right from the get-go. And so what you really kind of like learn from that is that you're really looking to serve the people, right? It's not about the content. The content gets created, right? So you're really looking at what's the problem that people have. So whether that's in the poker games where you're kind of like having that, you know, initial interest in learning a game to, you know, actually, you know, being so interested in a computer game that you want to actually learn or help out testing it, right? And each of these are tied, you know, and then obviously as I start continuing, I started tying them to business problems. So for us with Eidos, it was about, you know, working with the QA department and seeing the cost in that. And so as I was kind of like building this out, I started then, you know, really enjoying obviously what I was doing at Eidos. I thought, oh, I want to continue doing this. And then I joined Sony. So Sony Computer Entertainment, PlayStation. And they, back in the day, didn't have an online community yet. And that was the initial challenge, to set up an online community for Sony that would cover all of the different hardware and all of the different games that were on the PlayStation. And so we did, eventually covering 14 different languages. But it became an amazing, you know, kind of, you know, community, of which I will tell you a few more kind of stories about as well. But really, you know, I was starting to look at, all right, what solutions can communities kind of drive, right? And with people in that community, there is a lot of skill, right, that they have, and expertise that comes from their life that can really apply to our business. And so it's about finding those gaps within the business that, you know, we can look to fill with enthusiasm and drive from your customers. But before we get there, I want to just talk about a few observations from my experience. So at the moment, I kind of feel that for businesses, the marketplace is incredibly noisy, right? There's loads of different channels out there, from Instagram or TikTok or Facebook, you name it, to obviously, you know, actual homegrown communities as well. And with that amount of kind of like choice out there, it's very hard to kind of like stand out or compete with other incumbents, right, on someone else's platform, right? Especially when you're looking at social. You know, it's very much around followers and buzz, right? So there are one-way relationships, which, you know, stops you from building genuine community, right? These channels are very noisy, right? They're designed for kind of like short bursts and kind of like negative spins, right? That's what stays at the top. And on top of which, the competition is delivering its messaging on that same platform. While a third party basically controls the medium and therefore, you know, will, you know, affect your strategy, and they control the data. So in this kind of like environment, which is ever changing, how do you navigate all that, right? How do you even get started? I feel that these days relationships have become really fractured, right? With the pandemic, right? It's kind of like the end of the old normal now. And everyone's online, right? It's kind of like the only way to connect now. England is in lockdown again. So yeah, you know, we're all online, right? It's kind of like, you know, pretty new, but generally the internet is pretty new, right? We're only talking 25 years, right? So there's lots of platforms to kind of like, you know, choose from, and social media in terms of that, the way it's done, you know, its thing with putting content right at the front. It's really become kind of like, you know, muddied with fake news, conspiracy theories, and polarization. So I kind of feel that we as businesses need to start creating kind of like, you know, nice, welcoming online spaces for our customers where, you know, they can kind of like feel free, and they know it's a healthy environment where you can actually just speak your mind without, you know, fear of being jumped upon. Now, I think that's what we need to be looking at to do. So I feel that social media is not where we build value. It's certainly, you know, not a bad thing, obviously, you know, but as consumers, you know, I think when you can only comment on messaging, you can't really, you know, kind of enter into relationships with other customers, right? And that's kind of where resilience happens, when they're all in it together. Of course, content matters, right? But transactional one-offs, right, with likes and hates, or anonymous pontificating, it just doesn't lead to persistent connection, right? And on top of which, online safety, is a continuous concern now, right? With bullying, hate speech, discrimination, there's a whole spectrum of like microaggressions, right? So that's something that for me is leading the work that I do, right? Where I'm saying, I find it very difficult, to personally connect as a business, right? Meeting your actual customers, right, is hard. Where do you now talk to them, right? How do you get to know each other, build trusted relationships, of the people that either, work for you or work with you, right? How often is it that those people that either work on the product or the service get to talk directly to the people that are actually using it, right? Of course, we're looking at user research surveys, sometimes interviews, but as whole humans, right? Understanding what they think, right? What they want to do, right? What they want to experience. Yes, it's great to keep an eye on feedback through social media, your ratings, your reviews, your comments, maybe some customer service reports, right? That will definitely help spot major issues, but they don't really help you facilitate, the kind of conversations that are, really deep about your product or your service. And that's where real value starts being created, right? And so, I think there's many different aspects to, getting personal that benefits both the business and the customer. And so an example of that would be Mineo. This is a mobile phone company in Japan that I've worked with. We built a community around their company and started, working with the users and started listening to their problems and, what was, the difficulties in their lives. And one of the issues was, certainly in this day and age, is the amount of money that they have, right? And the disparity between, certainly within families, of who uses data and who doesn't, right? And so although it started off as a, initial kind of like idea around family and, data sharing, essentially, right? How can I have one pot of data that we as a family can all take data from? That was their initial idea. And so together with the community and Mineo, we started building that. And then that started, evolving into a great example of, humanitarian help in a way, where users, giving their mobile data into a massive big pot that those people who are less fortunate could take data out of. And doing these things with the community meant that community became so invested, in the company, that they were the ones who were responsible for bringing over 40% of all new customers, right? Mineo grew so quickly that it outperformed its competitors, right? 4 years running, right? So yes, it's very interesting when you're working, with these kind of like communities where there's a real purpose behind what we do. Similarly, Pure Planet, which is a utilities company, right? Gas, electricity. But Pure Planet is all around green energy, right? And so they're really looking to see if they can make a change in the world by creating green energy and only providing that. And so their online community invites its customers to participate in really thinking about its service and its products, right? Their members, they're the ones who are providing ideas, right? They're testing out products and features, right? And they're able to express their whole selves, right? In, massively active off-topic forums as well, right? So, there we can see that 20% of, the customers are members of their community, right? 98% of all content is created by that community. Massive cost saving for them. 1 in 3 members return every month to that community. And 80% of all of the best answers are provided by that community rather than the customer service. So these are genuine, business impacting changes that can happen when you start working with a community. And so my view is that, community is the future of social. It is how we are going to be connecting with our customers. And so how do we involve them, right? Include and integrate them, right? Make them part of our business, right? Staying relevant, right, means that you have to leverage that community and integrate them into your business. Businesses need to be able to acknowledge customer interest, right, their excitement and their skills, and integrate that into business processes, right? Where else, can you have these wide-ranging conversations, with a wide variety of people that really helps you to sort of like innovate and chart a course, right, through these times. An example at Sony, for example, was with PlayStation. We, connected the customers directly to development teams and games producers. Not only did the community take part in testing a product, right, saving also obviously quite a bit of money, but they were also responsible for creating, a full computer game at one stage, right? They were coming up with the storyboard, the characters, the weapons, everything, right, from start to finish, and that launched on the PlayStation Store, right? So you can really run, right, very large scale, volunteer-led events as well, right, across multiple different countries, with massive marketing reach and brand loyalty. And so, even with startups, right, those with little budgets, I can tell you it's definitely possible, right? If we're looking at giffgaff, right, as an example, right, giffgaff is a mobile virtual network operator, right, an MVNO. It means, a big incumbent has all of the masts up and running and, is running a mobile network already. And all you have is a software layer that you run over the top, and you can do billing, basically. Well, in our case, we couldn't really do billing because we couldn't actually charge for data for the first 6 months. So you're talking about, a company where to start off with 10 people were working in, and eventually we had, for the first couple of years, 20 people, right? So, you're talking about running a mobile phone company with 20 people. So no traditional customer service whatsoever. We were online only, so no brick and mortar stores whatsoever, no big budget advertising. It just started with the people, right? So, we were looking at, well, what's really frustrating for people? Multi-year contracts, right? Really confusing bills, call centers you can't even reach. So we said, all right, well, what are we going to do with that? Well, we're going to look at an online community to help us solve this. And as we were working and starting out, building our company, we thought, well, we want to make it as simple as possible. So we simply charge 4 pence for sending a text, 8 pence for, calling for a minute. And like I said, we couldn't even charge for data for the first 6 months. So the initial discussion was, what should we charge for data? Because we hadn't actually figured that out yet, right? So, as we started, that kind of discussion, people got really interested, right? And they started, getting really an understanding of how the company was working. And we started, explaining more and more how we were doing things. And with that, eventually what we figured out with the community was that actually we still want what, a contract offers, kind of like a bundle of text, minutes, and data. We just don't want to be tied to it, And that's how we kind of like, came up together with the community with the wide range of products that giffgaff now has. Their complete product portfolio is created, in coalition with their community. Similarly, the amount of, things you can control around your account on giffgaff is, massively increased versus any other mobile network operator, simply because we're continuously talking with that community to figure out, well, what other features would you like? And just so we are clear, these kind of like numbers that are under here are, things we genuinely measured, right? giffgaff was owned by a much larger corporate called Telefonica. And Telefonica has, mobile companies all over the world, mostly in South America. And so we know what it costs to set one of these up, right? And we were able to compare giffgaff specifically to all of these other MVNOs in these other countries. And, you know, so yes, and obviously from a customer service perspective, I should explain that there was a small customer service department which was handling queries which were account related. So we were very ruthless in this. We basically said, look, anything that's account related, right, is, you know, things that the community can't solve because they can't, you know, actually see into the account systems in that sense. So that can be passed on to customer service. But anything that isn't account related can be solved by the community, right? And so that's how we kind of like got to that whole idea of, you know, getting around 90 or more % of all customer service queries being solved by an online community, right? Because most of it was account related, that, you know, or the smallest part, sorry, was account related. So yes, your community really is your business. And so it's not like a tactic, right? You know, it's really an upgrade to your business strategy, right? It's not something that you only do, you know, like a marketing campaign. It's something that you continue to do, right? And so, you know, like for me, the purpose of an online community is really to create value for yourself and the customer, right? And you create this value by involving your customers in your business. And it works best when it's for mutual benefit, right? The customer gets a better product, and, you know, and you get a better service, right? So we have to tap into what actually interests people, right? What excites them, right? And we then need to help them on their path. So I wanted to, you know, touch on a few key principles that have helped me create kind of like healthy, positive atmosphere in my communities. And I know that they will help you too. So integrate your business into their lives. And that really is around really looking at, like I said before, like the skills that they have, right? What would they like to do? And, you know, you can go from very silly examples. One at giffgaff is we found someone in the community that was a radio DJ. And he knew about all of that technology and decided he was going to create a giffgaff radio station. And lots of other community members then jumped in and started helping out with the radio station. Then we found someone else who was a sound technician, and they created a jingle for the radio station. Now giffgaff has a radio station. It doesn't matter to us, it's fun, right? And so it's about finding those types of skills, right, that can lead to really, you know, off the cuff, fun stuff. But it can also lead to, you know, real genuine kind of like business changes. So an example of this is at one stage, we put a range of banners on a variety of sites to promote the product, right? And our community didn't really like the way we had worded it. And so they were kind of like talking about that. And so we had open discussions with them and said, well, what do you not like about the wording? This, that, and the other. And so I said, all right, cool. Can you come up with a better phrase? And so, yeah, off to work they went, and, you know, various back and forths around a variety of phrases. And then they also mentioned that they didn't really like the artwork. So, okay, fair enough. Maybe, you know, what's wrong with it, right? So we started, you know, discussing back and forth what was wrong with the artwork. And this all eventually led to the community creating 5 different banners for us with their slogans, with their artwork, which we A/B tested versus our own. And turns out that 3 of theirs worked a lot better than our own. So we used theirs, right? So it's these kind of like thousands of ideas that are being generated by a community on a daily basis that can really integrate into what you do. And so, you know, it can even mean that you actually integrate them into business processes. And an example of this is years ago, you remember mobiles had a big SIM card, right? Until in 2010, Apple decided that, you know, in fact, the SIM card was too big and we're going to make them smaller. Well, we're at giffgaff and we don't have a lot of budget, and we have a warehouse full of massive SIM cards. So, you know, what do we do with these big SIM cards, right? And we can't just change our product, right, to immediately create these little SIM cards. So yeah, there are back then anyway, I'm sure they still exist, these scissors that you can buy, and you can stick a SIM card in and you click, and then out pops the little SIM card that you need for your iPhone. So I went out and bought, about 3 or 4 of them, because some people in the community were saying like, "Ooh, I really want to change my SIM card, but I'm scared of cutting it with scissors." So I said, "Oh, cool, I'll buy you a scissor," and I sent the scissor out. And I did that a couple of times. And what happens? These scissors start doing what's called a round robin. So each time someone says, "Ooh, I want to cut my SIM card," the last member of the community who had the scissor sends it on to the next one. So this starts becoming kind of like a thing in the giffgaff community, members helping each other out. And now people are saying, "You know what? I'm going to buy a pair of these scissors myself. And anytime someone wants one of these, I'm just going to cut one for them and send it over to them." This becomes more of a thing, and people are, starting to do a little round robin. And now a website is created. And eventually this led to a complete end-to-end distribution model led by the community, created by the community, that we implemented onto our site, because we simply didn't have the possibility to deliver these little SIM cards yet. So now when you order the giffgaff SIM, there would be a little link. Are you looking for an iPhone SIM card? If so, click here. This is a member-run website. So now we have our community completely integrated into our business process. And I've got so many of these kind of like examples, but I might go a little bit too far. Another little sort of like, counterintuitive like concept I kind of wanted to leave you with was small equals big. And what does that mean? There's just an enormous vastness of opportunity out there, right, with just a few people. And it's a lot more doable than people realize, right? So, even in big companies, right, you can still be a small team, but it's very much around showing people that you're real people. Right, and that you are interested in what they're saying, and you are sharing of yourself, right? And by doing that and showing people that you are working as hard as you can to, give that great service and to create that great product, which is what we're doing, right? We're excited for the companies we work for, right? So as long as that kind of like, really shines through, and people are aware of, who Vincent is, right, or who Dave is, right, and they've had a chat with them, they're much more willing to be engaging and interested in what you do. And not only that, they become much more forgiving, right? And so keep that in mind as you're running these communities. Similarly, another counterintuitive one is vulnerability actually equals strength, right? So being transparent, and being transparent also about the things that you're struggling to do, right, allows people to, start thinking for you, right, or with you, right, and help you out, right? And if you can show that you're interested in their help, then they do even more of that, right? And again, that kind of like vulnerability also around honesty, again, generates a lot of forgiveness. So an example of this is, at one stage, we had a server outage, and that was because a water main, right, had burst above the server room, right? Well, what can you do about that, right? This is like literally a burst water pipe is flooding the server room, right? So now you've got a complete telco, right, upside down, and nothing of the service is working because, the server room is flooded. So I was talking about that with that community. People go, all right, yeah, well, that's fair enough. But not only that, we continuously updated them, right? Every kind of like 10, 15 minutes, as soon as we knew something, we would update them straight away, right? And so now people got really involved in the conversation, and, they were even looking for us for other data centers, and, it was amazing, right? And so, within sort of like 8 hours, we had it back up and running, and people were just amazed at how well we had done, that we had the whole network up and running after something like that happens within 8 hours. And with people on social, right, sometimes they come in screaming, right? They go like, oh my God, my phone isn't working. But it would be other customers, right, that would be jumping in and saying, yeah, hold on, right, they had a burst water main in their server room, right? I think they can be forgiven, right? And so that kind of stuff is just so important around, showing, who you are and how hard you're working to solve their issues and create a better product and service. And then lastly, I just wanted to let you know, all of this, and I'm still doing this, for example, Airbnb is one of the communities I've been involved in for the last 5 years. All of this strategy is still being done and executed on spreadsheets, right? Downloading data. Very frustrating. So I've decided to create my own, online community platform, which is pure API, so you can actually visualize it yourself however you like. And I'm adding in all of this kind of like methodology on how I do this into this actual platform. So, please, if you're building communities and you're interested in this kind of stuff, feel free to reach out to me. I'm very, very interested in hearing what you're building. And yes, thank you very much for all of your attention.
And we're back. So many great stories. Like I can't wait for the next summit and for other opportunities. But you're here also in the rest of the days. Are you joining in the end one of the panels tomorrow? Are you joining the one with Brian or?
Maybe. I'll have to see if I've got time. It's busy time.
That says thanks. So we have Roy Azizi. We have people here from so many cool countries. We have people here from the United Emirates. There was this peace accord with Israel. Now suddenly, the flow between the countries is crazy. So we have here Claire from the United Arab Emirates is here from Saudi. Sorry, wow, Saudi. We don't have a peace agreement yet, but we still have her online. Just crazy the connections we can do today with this online platform, and the stories I think are relevant. It doesn't matter if you're from Eastern Europe, Western Europe, if you're from North America, South America, if you're from the East and the Far East. We're all human beings, and you can see the similarities everywhere you go. So. Love the story.
I've done this throughout the world as well. So with Telefonica, for example, we started at giffgaff, but then we set up a company to repeat what we did at giffgaff as a customer community side of things. And so we went all over South America. We did the exact same model at big incumbents like Vivo with 120 million customers, or Argentina and Movistar. Literally Central America, Chile, and like I said, Japan. Like the formula, like the way we interact with people and the kind of like things that we look at, the kind of people that we find to interact with, that works, regardless of what country it's in. So yeah, it's very interesting.
So I want to add Carol because she had a good question. She's a community professional. Let's add her on from London. Oh, a neighbor. Okay.
Hiya. Thank you for inviting me to the stage. I'm not sure how to turn my camera on. How we done? I've seen it. I got it. Okay. Hi everyone. It's coral, like under the sea.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you for that really interesting talk, Vince. I actually know a lot about your business and standing on giants, and giffgaff was a client of mine until quite recently, so I'm very familiar with your work, but I still learned loads from your presentation, so thank you. I just wondered whether what your thoughts were on whether there are any industries or brands that you wouldn't recommend having an online community. Like, obviously I can hear from what you're saying that, community is the new social, and, brands should be embracing it. 100% agree. But are there any industries or any brands that you think it actually wouldn't work for? It may not be the case, but I just wondered.
Yeah, well, I think your local plumber doesn't need a community.
Just so Vince can answer, and I can put somebody else on. But it's a great question, and I'm really looking forward to his answer. Who don't you want as a client? You'll say no if he comes as a client. That's another way to ask it. So we'll see you in a second, Koal. Yeah. Vince.
So yeah, no, I think your local plumber kind of thing that doesn't need a community really. It's anything that kind of like has a purpose, right? And it doesn't really need very many people. So, for years I've been running the community for O2 in the UK. which is kind of like larger incumbent, again, a mobile company in this case. But that community kind of runs on around 10 to 12 people, right? And it's a massive customer community, yeah? But you're talking about 10 to 12 people that are providing, 90% of the answers that are happening in that community, 90% of the content. And they've been doing that for years, right? So yeah, like communities, and then that's still a large company, by the way. But yeah, you've also got much smaller communities, certainly, in the development space, right? Where you're developing, and certainly, geez, my own community, right? You're developing, a platform with just a few people. So, it really depends. What's the purpose for it, right? If you've got a good purpose, you've got a community, and that can include a few people, or it can include thousands or millions.
So maybe a quick criteria for Coral about, so if you're a very small business, so it's not worthwhile also investing in building a community. And by the way, I would take it to the other way around. I love always to say what yes and not what no. Questions about what not to do is also important. But let's think like if I'm a local plumber, you have the great BNI communities, about businesses getting together. So maybe you shouldn't build a community, but maybe you should join a community. So I think it's always.
I think that's the difference, right? In that case, yes, a community for plumbers could work, but your local plumber having a community with its customers might be a struggle.
Exactly. So that's a great point. So if any of you guys have any other questions you want to get on stage, just raise your hand. In the meantime, I want to ask a question about the scissors. Wasn't it a hassle for members to say, like, why was it worthwhile? Was it such a big thing to pass the scissors? Like, can't you just get a new SIM, or like it's what they went to the post office and send it to each other? Did they really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. They would genuinely send over scissors to each other in an envelope. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And initially, people were very scared about actually cutting the SIM with normal scissors, because they were worried they would damage the chip in it, so therefore they would lose their number, or that those kind of worries, right? So yeah, these specific SIM card scissors were kind of like a valuable kind of thing, and so yeah, people were really generous and just sending them around and helping each other out. Yeah.
Okay, we have another question from Georg from Germany, that has good questions before, so I'm going to join him again. Let's wait for a second. For some reason, he doesn't get on stage. We'll give it another minute or two. Maybe he took off his hand. Here he is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. We wish we could see you also soon.
Yeah, I don't know what's happening. So maybe pictures coming.
Pictures coming. Maybe you have it. No, it's not covered. I see just pictures off. Just turn it on. It should be underneath.
Okay, it's about me. So sorry. Too many buttons to press. Yeah. Thank you, Vincent. I joined a bit lately. So, but at the end, you were talking about building up an authentic community. And what is the point, or what are the things you're doing to make communities really authentic, so that people are authentic? So just to explain a bit where I come from T-Systems, Deutsche Telekom. So we are building company internal communities since 10, 15 years. So we have many of them. So we leverage the power of all these communities. But the challenge is that on one side, you have the management system, who is top-down driven, target focused. And on the other side, you have the informal part of communities. And you can keep them both alive. But from my point of view, you have to be very clear which mechanism is in charge, basically. And the informal part is basically being more yourself, being authentic, and talking what you think and what you feel. On the management part, on the management side, you cannot always be that open and authentic. Yeah, so we have non-disclosure agreements. We have a lot of restrictions or compliance issues, etc., where I cannot talk like I want to talk. And so I'm interested in how do you distinguish between these two worlds, yeah? And how do you bring the authenticity in?
Yeah.
Jorg, I'm going to take you off. Thank you so much for the question. And this will be the last question for this session. Great. Vince, very good question and very important to almost every community leader, especially in large corporates, and especially in certain cultures that have a very usually strict culture about communications. So,
yeah. Yeah, I think, some things are cultural, right? Business culture. Others are regulation, right? So it used to be there are or were, difficulties around running communities for banks, for example, and insurance companies. Both of these, thankfully, are less of a worry now. And so, there's in terms of what you share or can't share with your community, I often find there is very little you can't share, right? And yes, if there are certain, non-disclosure agreements and that kind of stuff, then potentially, some things need to be done behind closed doors. So a good example of that would be, at Sony, where the beta test community was all behind closed doors. Right. And so therefore, for that community, just to be able to be part of that community, you already had to sign non-disclosure communities, disclosure agreements. So once in, you can then be completely free, right? Because you can only get in there once you've signed something. So that is a way to solve that problem. Generally, I find that businesses have, reasons for the things that they do. And it's not that difficult to explain them, right? At a kind of like a lower level, right? And letting people know, why you're making the decisions that you're making is a really large part of building those initial relationships. And then separately, there is just a lot of groundwork that needs to be done, right? So from a community management perspective, about 90% of all of the work that community managers do that work for me is send private messages, right? So we are very, very much around building, right, one-to-one relationships at scale with the right people, right? So if you do that, you can then leverage those people, which we call empowered customers, to then spread, messages out faster, or, recruit people faster, for projects that you're running, those types of things. So yes, it is a problem that you attack from two sides. One, it is around, working around transparency, finding out, what the reasons are, why you're making decisions, and explaining those. There's very much also around, taking in feedback and then coming back and saying, hey, we heard your feedback and this is our answer to it, right? So those types of things work really well. And then, yes, on a ground level, very much a one-to-one relationship building exercise.
Okay, great. Great point, Vince. As Michael said, we have, first of all, thank you for this amazing session. But before we finish it, I want to give a few tips for the people that are viewing this session. Join the networking tables, join the booth of our different sponsors and our members here that joined and partnered us and helped us. Okay, you have the arena, you have all the booth, in the lounge, you have the networking, the speed networking, and the table to just join network. And also you can send direct messages to all the attendees you have in the right and say, join me in a table, and you can have video chats within the table. Maybe you'll have other people joining you. So that's just a technical thing that I really wanted to tell everyone to continue the discussion. I think Vince added here so many points to discuss about big and small, about vulnerability that makes strength. And I really, it sounds like big issues, but all of you have stories. And we, as a large event that, I had some people in my network just say, hey, why are you doing a live event? Just send us the videos and we'll see it later. No, that's exactly the thing. Who has time to see these videos? If it's not live, if it's not interactive, if we don't learn something new. And one of the other guys in my network was like, send me, but what new would I learn? And that's the thing. When you have a live session with Vince, you can say, oh, this is things I heard. And of course, I know that small equals big. But the difference is with these live sessions is the ability to ask, to drill down, to get the exact example and right inspiration that can become collaboration in the end, become something that pushes growth in your community, in your organization, in whatever you do. So we have this amazing platform for you guys to continue to interact and create value together for each other. That's what we hear. That's what we try to facilitate. Vince, thank you so much again. Hope to see you on the platform around. Again, I think Deutsche Telekom, with your experience, should really get in direct contact with you and maybe see if they can do something together with you. And that's it. Thank you guys for being online.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.